All right, trick or treat. Happy Halloween, everybody. Today is going to be another amazing day. What a way to kick off our Monday. NAHB Chief Economist Dr. Robert Dietz and past chair Greg Ugaldi joined Dave Cooper live for a Q&A on the housing recession. Who wins? Who loses, and when does it end? With lessons learned from the Great Recession and data points on just about everything else, get your questions in early to see how your business can navigate in this global economy and find the opportunity to survive and thrive in the ecosystem of housing. Now, we can't bring you any of these conversations without thanking our sponsors first. So a big shout out to Carson Holmquist and the team at Stream Logistics. They are experts in high stake freights, and they are the perfect choice for projects with timelines and a specific delivery sequence. Shipments with high complexity and unique constraints. The new methods of construction need new transportation solutions, and they are up for the challenge. Go ahead and visit them at streamlogistics.com. And also, can't forget CombiLift, the largest global manufacturer of multi-directional forklifts and straddle carriers. They are a leader in long load handling solutions, offering a free warehouse and site optimization design service. CombiLift helps companies of all sizes and from every industry maximize the capacity, safety, and efficiency of their warehouse and storage facilities. Big shout out to Paul Short and the team at CombiLift for helping us all build it better. Go to combilift.com for more information. And let's not forget our tech geeks. We got Brave Control Solutions. We're offsite manufacturing systems that do more than just improve productivity. They have a unique approach to industrializing construction and a lineup of flexible automated systems specifically designed for the construction industry, empowered by CAD to Fab and turnkey solutions for 3D volumetric assembly, structural insulated panels, finished wall assemblies, MEP component processing, assembling, kitting, and storage. Go to thinkbrave.com. All right, today's going to be a big day. We're going to kick it off with Greg Ugaldi right now, and then we will lead in with Dr. Dietz. Mr. Ugaldi, good to see you. How are you today?
Good. How are you today, Dave?
Every day, every week just gets more and more exciting, and it's so much fun every time you come on the show. So I'm doing really well, and happy Halloween to you.
Happy Halloween. Yeah, all sorts of, and you still have young ones that can get out there and enjoy trick-or-treating and so on, right?
Forget that. I'm going to be out there trick-or-treating. The candy's for me.
Go.
They're just the pawns to help me get it. I love it.
Perfect.
Yeah, for sure. So, Greg, it's been I guess almost about a month and a half, 2 months, I think, since you were last on the show. There's been a lot happening. There's been a lot of updates. Why don't you just real quick tell everybody a little bit about who you are, because we got a bigger audience these days. They may not know you. And then let's hop into some of the updates you want to give us.
Sure. So I'm Greg Ugaldi, and I'm the president and chief legal officer for T&M Building, and we are a residential builder, and we build all over the state of Connecticut. And I am also NAHB past chairman. So I've been through the ranks at our local, state, and national association. So quite involved in many different things.
You are. Well, here's what I love to tell people that maybe do not understand. Greg, you are not only the past chair at the NAHB, you're also a builder. You also have a legal background. You live and breathe and make your living by building and developing properties. And I think it's really good that everybody understands that, because you come from a place of experience in doing it, as well as a place of knowledge. And, you understand the politics behind what happens in Washington. So thank you. Mm-hmm. All right, Kansas. What happened in Kansas? We just had the leadership meetings. Tell us some good news.
Sure. So we just had what we call our fall leadership meetings in Kansas City, and we have all the leaders from around the country come together. So we have our corporate board meetings as well as our leadership council. And we talk about different policy and all sorts of things. But really, the highlights that we get, one of them we're doing today, is we get our economic forecasts and help us plan on what everybody needs to do as we look at the near futures, working into the long-term future. Then we also we're looking at product forecasts and what the supply chain looks like, how mortgage market looks. Workforce is a big one all the time. We get right down into the weeds with what's required. And I know that you want to get into a lot of those aspects today just to bring the audience up to speed too on some of the things that we talked about. But it's a fantastic week. And what we really enjoy is we're the federation that touches every state and many locals and associations. And we bring that information all under one roof.
Well, and that's it. You are the ones out there helping protect us and policies and put good things in place for us as well. We are going to bring Dr. Dietz on here in just a few minutes. So we're going to touch base on workforce development, housing affordability, and all those things as well. Greg, let's speed round through some of the next couple of things. We got a lot to cover today, and we'll have some fun with it. So one of the big things that we love to talk about, the International Builder Show. What do we got happening this year? Give us some great updates.
So here we have quite a bit. The first thing is, let's get it on everybody's calendar, Dave, right? So we're going to start for the actual components when you can go onto the floor. You know, we're there for what, 10 days? You're going to be there filming. We have all sorts of meetings. But to actually view the products and walk the floor, which is many, many football fields of exhibits, very worthwhile seeing them all. So January 31st through February 2nd, 2023. We're going to have Mike Rose opening, the keynote speaker. We're going to have Sheryl Crow close us down with the last concert. Yeah, that's something special too. And, the things that you have to remember are anything new affecting our industry is on display. The products, education, second to none. Education you can get all week long, and you can do it for whatever purposes, whether it's marketing or products or, motivating your sales staff. Just everything is all right there. And, where I got to tell you, we are way ahead of the mark where we thought we could be, because we're still going to be doing it with KBIS, and we're bringing in NHS, the National Hardware Show. We have a couple other prospects out there that we're looking, but it's going to be a big show. We'll probably have 100,000 people close to it there, which is very exciting to get together with that many people of the same mindset.
100,000 people. It is one of the most exciting shows of the year. It's one of my favorite shows. And you're right. It's just not the educational learning. There is hands-on learnings. There's high performance zones. There's safety zones. There's the outside area where builders and people are building their products outside. You had a 3D printer there last year. There's a lot of exciting stuff to see. And the who's who of the industries there as well. So if you like rubbing shoulders with some of the best, like Dr. Dietz, who will be on here shortly, he's a star in his own right. And yourself, this is the place to be. All right, let's get into it. Building code cycle. What do we got?
So that's important, Dave, because what's happening now is that we're in a position where everybody, all the states and local jurisdictions are looking at the model code and figuring out how to pass it and use it at the local, state, and county levels. So when we're looking at this, right now, and I'll give you an example right here in Connecticut. You used to build in Connecticut, and you know how the codes work here. It's very interesting to see that we're all for energy efficiency and for resiliency and making sure that we're doing things better, right? That's the motto that we all go by. Your show hits on that hard and heavy. One of the things that we have to do as an industry is make sure that we are at least balancing the cost of these factors. Whenever we look to improve, we have to make sure that we keep an eye on the cost as well. So when we look in Connecticut, the early estimates, and we're just looking to get this stuff in place now and to pass it so that we can start using it, but we're looking at a $10,000 to $20,000 increase on new construction per unit. That's significant, and those are ballpark figures. Yes, as we look at the products, as well as, Dave, don't forget the labor that goes into some of these improvements and changes. So all that will be revealed as time goes on. And because this is just new as of October 1st in Connecticut. So now we really actually need to do it in hands-on in the field so we can get some of these costs. But you can see that it's not for the weak-hearted. It's at, the whole theme of this speed round now, we're going to talk about housing affordability. Keep that in mind as we're talking about all these different factors.
Yeah, housing affordability and $20,000-$30,000 increases don't sound like they go hand in hand to me, but we'll take a look at that. All right, let's keep moving forward. All right, $20,000 to $30,000 increase. Building material prices must have something to do with that.
So when you look at building materials, Rob's going to get into quite a bit of that too. What we can look for, especially year over year, when we're talking about 15% to 20% increases year over year, a couple years in a row now, that's serious. Not to mention what any type of delays. Certain products now, lumber has become under control, but you remember we had those figures, 30,000 per house extra when we were looking at the lumber increases, but now it's across the board with lumber increases. We have to be very careful when we're looking at how much that adds. Right. Lots of good new products too that we can look to substitute and figure out ways to do it better, but there's costs associated with a lot of these increases that are definitely affecting first time and move up buyers.
That's right. That's right. And for all of you watching, guess what? It isn't all doom and gloom today on the show. We have tricks, but we also have some treats coming up at the end of the show. You know, Dr. Dietz is going to bring some good news along with the bad news and the in-between news and all the other news.
Right.
Stay tuned for that. All right. All right. Let's keep moving. You mentioned workforce development. Where are we at?
So, you know, any one time we're looking at about 450,000 job openings in our industry. Could be a little bit less, could be a little bit more. But, you know, as we look and talk about some of the difficult times with interest rates rising and the outlook it's not going to really be an end all when we're looking for workforce solutions. We still need to get everybody trained, and we still need to bring in a lot of the people that we're losing that are aging out and people that are choosing to do different things. So we are focusing on that. We have a lot of great things to report in our efforts to train the right people and bring a youth movement into our industry. And we have a lot of that going on. That'll be at IBS as well. And, you know, you're involved in that across the country as well. It's very exciting to see people, you know, we're talking young people that don't have to take these big, huge college loans and can show up at their class reunions in a new car with very little debt and, you know, a nice job that they could schedule themselves if they want to be entrepreneurial. But a lot of workforce development efforts, and you have a lot of people on the show even that are working in that area. So we're trying to look at that as a way to control costs moving forward as well.
Yeah, for sure. You know, and that workforce development and that youth movement, that's a new t-shirt, by the way. We'll have to work on that. The youth movement is absolutely right. Show up not only in a new car, but a new house and make more money than most people that spend a lot of money going to college. And that's the beauty of our industry right now. All right. Housing affordability. You know, this is something you mentioned a couple of times now, Greg. You're starting to make me think a little bit.
Yep. So, and you remember, Dave, when I came on, when I was chairman, that was our mantra, right? Housing affordability. It's something that hasn't changed. If anything, it's become as much of a challenge now as it ever was, and it keeps increasing. So you look right now, and it's a perfect segue to get Rob out here and look at all these factors, but we're in an increasing interest rate environment. We have material costs increasing, workforce hard to come by, but certainly labor costs are going up. We have all of these different things. So besides learning how to attack all of these things, we have to be prepared for it. And there's nobody better to do that than Dr. Rob Dietz, right? We've had plenty of time to hear from him, you and I, and visit with him. But our audience is in for a treat today because this is the most important thing that you can look at these next couple months as we're wrapping up 2022, going into 2023. What's out there? What's the biggest concerns that we're looking at, and what can we do about them? And Dr. Dietz, Rob is just the person to do it.
He is just the person. We're going to bring Dr. Robert Dietz on here in a second, but I want everybody to understand. Dr. Dietz, one, he's an Ohio Buckeyes fan, so if you like Ohio out there, you're going to definitely like Dr. Dietz. He has an awesome personality. He's on a lot of the major network TV shows. He travels this country nonstop, and I think really everybody needs to understand that. He is always on the road listening to myself, to listening to Greg, and all the builder associations across this country. So not only does he have the data, but he also has the inside conversations on what's happening in all the different states across this country. So with that said, why don't we bring Dr. Rob Dietz in? Dr. Dietz, how are you?
I'm doing well. It's good to join both of you today. I'm used to seeing you guys in person, so
right.
Good to see you here virtually.
Yeah. Well, it's awesome to have you here. And just so everybody you're watching, Dr. Dietz also took a moment and stopped by Atlanta to the Building Systems Council Summit that we had recently down there and gave a keynote for us. And that was great, too, and well received. So, Dr. Dietz, why don't you take 2 seconds and just tell everybody a little bit about who you are and what you do for those who may not know you.
Yeah, I've got one of the best jobs in the world. I'm chief economist at NAHB. I've been at NAHB for about 17 years. I've got a PhD in economics from the Ohio State University. And I've been studying housing economics basically since I was 18. So there are better times to talk about the state of the housing market than certainly right now. But I do think we've got some good news ultimately down the road.
Yeah, for sure. So, Dr. Dietz, you travel all over this country. You see what's happening, not just by the numbers, but through the conversations and being in all the different markets. Why don't we kick this off and start running through, this trick or treat session, because there are a lot of tricks coming up there and some hurdles we'll probably have to jump through from what I understand. But at the end of it as well, I think there's some sunshine that may be shining as well. So we look forward to this. So why don't we kick off with the high mortgage rates approaching?
Yeah, I mean, so if the primary driver right now of the slowdown, the contraction that we see in the housing market really was driven by the increase in interest rates at the start of the year. So mortgage interest rates right now are right around 7%. The good news there is that we think a lot of the increase from the tightening of monetary policy from the Federal Reserve is essentially baked in the cake. But the bad news is we've still got a little ways to go in terms of getting to that peak mortgage interest rate that we think is going to be somewhere between 7 and 8%. So in the short run, that is going to drive housing demand down. But ultimately, and I think this occurs by the time we get to 2024, the Federal Reserve will be in a position where they begin to ease on that monetary policy that will bring mortgage rates down. And just like we know that housing typically leads into the weakness of an economic recession, housing is often the first sector to lead into a rebound. And we do think that is going to occur in 2024.
Rebounds. I love the rebound. And 2024 doesn't sound too far away. But let's talk about declining affordability conditions, and like you said, that's mirroring builder sentiment.
Yeah, so we do an index of housing affordability. This was Greg's, sort of primary focus when he was on the senior officer ladder at NAHB. But if you look at housing affordability conditions, the combination of those higher interest rates combined with a 30, 40, in some markets, 50% increase in home prices means that we're at more than a decade low in housing affordability conditions. And of course, that's particularly challenging for first-time and first-generation home buyers. So the impact of that, pricing out essentially millions of buyers from the market, has had a big impact on our measure of builder confidence, which is the NAHB Wells Fargo Housing Market Index. It's now declined 10 straight months. It's at more than a decade low. And what it's indicating to us as a forecast tool right now is ongoing declines for single family starts at the end of 2022, weakness for much of 2023 and some additional declines. And then, as I said earlier, ultimately we think a stabilization and a rebound building in 2024.
And the rebound building in 2024. And you see that. So we have the increase, like Greg was saying, of the housing costs going up. But we do see the cost of purchasing those houses, even though the build cost is going up, will be dropping over the next year or so.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at construction costs right now, they're up 35% on
Yeah.
average for a typical home. But as Greg indicated, that year-over-year growth rate in the aggregate costs, led by lumber, lumber has come down from $1,500 per thousand board feet to now closer to $500 per thousand board feet. It started at 350, so it's still elevated. But that growth rate in residential construction material costs looks like it's slowing. It's slowing quickly. We're right at about 12% year over year. I think it's probably headed down to zero, given the weakness that we see in single family home building right now.
That's great. That's great. So the expectations then for the ongoing elevated interest rates are for them to drop. And I think that's super important. And that's good. That's not bad news.
Yeah, the bad news is just the amount of time we're going to have to wait for it. That's the trick here. It's thinking about the fact that 2023 is going to be a tough year. And all of this is really driven by two factors: the Federal Reserve's fight against inflation,
right,
and the degree to which the Federal Reserve can achieve what it wants to achieve, which I think is impossible. And that's the soft landing, bringing inflation down without causing a recession. Now, the reason that we're fairly confident about the idea of a rebound in 2024 is either the Fed is going to win its fight in inflation in 2023, or it's going to go too far. Interest rates will spike. That will bring a recession on. And when recessions occur, interest rates fall because then the Fed has to ease. So in either situation, in the coming, say, 5 quarters, the Fed's going to have to be in a position where it brings interest rates down. But we should be clear, not interest rates that we saw in 2021, 2-3% range, but more like interest rates in the 5% range, which will be a decline from where we are right now.
Well, 5 is better than 7. So the contraction continues, as you're talking about. Do you want to elaborate on that anymore? Or?
Yeah, I mean, so if you think about where single family starts really went during the run up during the post-COVID environment where we had historically low interest rates, we saw housing starts on a calendar year basis get up above 1.1 million, which is high enough to reduce the housing deficit that we know exists in the marketplace. In 2023, we're going to see a significant decline, more than 10%. That's going to take us probably below 900,000 in terms of an annualized rate. Could it be even a little bit lower? So 2023 is going to be a challenging year. And then even markets like multifamily that have seen strength in 2021 and 2022 are likely to slow because our expectation is that the unemployment rate in 2023 is going to rise as high as 6%. It's at 3.5% right now. So higher interest rates, joblessness, all this means housing demand pulling back, but it's not going to be completely eliminated. It's moving to the sidelines, waiting for housing affordability to improve in early 2024.
And on this rebound in 2024 and improving, is it a significant rebound? Are we looking at a real steep climb as far as it goes, or is it more of a gradual get back to real work and good longevity of building cycles?
History tells us, at least coming out of the Great Recession, that this will be something more gradual. It'll be stabilization being achieved in 24, maybe rising up to the high 900,000 range for single family starts, approaching that 1 million rate. And then by the time we get to 2025, getting back to that 1.1 million level, which I think over the next 5 years, roughly 2025 to 2030, is a pretty good runway for growth for home building, because we have a housing deficit of about 1 million homes. It's going to take a number of years to reduce that. And then on the demand side, the millennials are going to be moving into their early 40s. They have delayed buying those single family homes, and there's just a huge number of them. So once we can get interest rates back to a more normalized basis, and as long as we've got the labor and the lots and a supplied building material pipeline, those factors suggest we've got a pretty good back end of this decade for home building.
Yeah, I love it. All right, listen, everybody, if you're just joining us, we got Dr. Robert Dietz on and Greg Ugaldi joining us, talking about what the housing forecast looks like, also what's happening at the National Association of Home Builders and the International Builders Show. Greg, we are live on LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, and Twitter. And I'm looking at the YouTube count. My golly, you're good for business, Dr. Dietz. I'm going to have you on more often. everybody that's out there, we're going to get to the comments and questions here in just a moment, but we do want to thank you for tuning in. We do want to thank you for participating in this. I know a lot of you are in the offsite construction industry out there, and it's just awesome that we can have some of the heads from the National Association of Home Builders join us on this show, because it takes all of us to move this industry forward, and I'm super excited about it. So thanks again, Dr. Dietz and Greg, for joining us today, even though he wants me to call him Rob. Doctor's just something that they gave him in school, but he likes the name Rob. All right, so couple questions for you before we get into comments and question in the audience is, when you were at the Building Systems Council and you gave your economic outlook there, one of the big questions is why the disparity between what you perceive as the lack of housing versus the media, right? You were around, I think you said about 1 million home shortage, where if you look at some of the media outlets, it's $5 to $7 million shortage. What's your thoughts there?
There's a lot of good studies. They're well done, but we take a decidedly conservative approach. So the studies that find that we're short 4 million, 5 million, I've even seen numbers as high as 8 million. They're really just quite too high given the size of the population today. And our team estimates about 1 million shortfall. It's by looking at vacancy rates, metro by metro, and saying, okay, we know vacancy rates are low today. How much additional housing stock would we have to add overnight as kind of a mathematical exercise in order for those vacancy rates to come to their historic norms? And that's about 1 million homes. And I think part of the difference for some of the studies that suggest a 3 to 4 million housing deficit is they're ignoring some of these non-traditional sources of housing supply. Now, I'm not saying they're as good as a single family home that's owner occupied, but we do have to account for things like the addition of 1.5 million accessory dwelling units, for example.
Yeah.
It's a form of housing stock. Yes, it turns a owner-occupied single-family home effectively into a duplex with an owner-occupant and a tenant, but it is a form of supply. It's added an apartment. So I think our numbers reconcile in that sense. And then if you think that we build about, on average in an equilibrium year, we should be building about 1.1 million homes. That kind of suggests we're short about a year's worth of production. Some of those other numbers are really, really quite too large. And we're going to see a test of this because the inventories of both new and existing homes are rising right now due to that temporary pullback in housing demand. And so the structural deficit, that's what we call that million shortfall, is the seed for a rebound in 2024.
Yeah. Are you seeing a pullback from the big developers, the big home builders across the country?
Yeah.
Have they slowed up? Are they starting to sell off some land? And what's going on there that you're seeing?
Yeah, national and regional builders, slowing down their operations, layoffs in some markets, particularly the really hot ones. You can think of markets like in the mountain states that saw big gains in home prices. Some a disposition of actual building lots. And so that's going to be a tough forecasting challenge on the ground for individual land developers and builders saying, okay, I know the demand is going to be there in 24 and 25.
Right.
Do I take the risk now and buy that land and lots and hold the carrying costs? And that's how builders and land developers make their money, trying to time these cycles. So, yeah, I think we're seeing that particularly in the spec building market, the custom building market, higher priced, larger homes is doing better. And then the single family built for rent market is showing a lot of strength right now. Right. So it's not market weakness in every sector, nor is it market weakness in every geography. And that was something that I'm sure, Greg, you heard it too in Kansas City.
Right.
I had builders come up to me and say, I know you guys are talking about a housing recession. My market's doing just fine. If anything, we've just kind of cooled off a little bit and it's healthier. Right. But there are some markets right now that are really feeling a contraction.
Yeah, already. So you mentioned like the build for rent market, how is that going to change the landscape moving forward, and is it going to change what we build and where we build?
I think so. So first of all, if you look at the data, the typical home that's built for rent typically is more likely to be a townhouse, for example. It's built on a smaller lot. It's typically a smaller square footage. The materials might be more affordable with the expectation of turnover of tenants. But the big thing is the market share. Single family built for rent has always existed. It tended to be disproportionately senior housing in certain parts of the country. It was about 3% of single family home building. Right now, it's probably at least 11 to 12%, and it's expanding in a lot of these big, expensive, as Greg said, low housing affordability markets where you've got people who want a single family structure. They want the yard for the dog and the kids. They can't afford to buy because of the down payment and current mortgage interest rate. So the growth rate that we've seen for single family built for rent right now, it's roughly double where it was a year ago. We think that market share is likely to grow to at least 15% in the coming quarters, and then likely cool off and form kind of a new normal for this industry. It's not going to be 3% anymore. It's going to be a larger part of the market, attracting capital, attracting entrepreneurial talent, and it's going to represent a real change where we build and how we build.
Yeah, Greg, how about in your market? I mean, you're a developer up in Connecticut. What are you seeing just firsthand? I mean, you're living and breathing it.
You know, it's interesting too, because let's back up, you know, and as Rob's outlining this, the last time we had some of these, the tightening aspect of markets, we had an awful lot of inventory that was still in the marketplace. This time, there's no inventory to speak of. So that's why you hear Rob talk about price increases, but from a builder developer standpoint, everybody's got to be out there figuring out that analysis Rob was just talking about. Is it time to put resources into acquisition and in development? That means, you know, you go in and you get things approved and then improved. You know, you're going to cut roads in, you're going to put utilities in, sewer, water, get them ready to bring to the marketplace. So you have all of that going on. One of the things that we find right now is that we've used all of that up. So in a place like up in New England, Dave, that you're used to seeing, a lot of that prep work that's been done in the past now isn't leading toward additional units to be built on. So we have to really take a look at that. And also you have another thing that's been grabbing that is this, what Rob was just talking about, single family build to rent. So that piece, if you think about that percentage, if you're looking at the percentage, the whole pie, a large percent, when you look at it that way, has gone to those units going to this area, this sector. So there's a lot of things at play here, and the ability to acquire land to build on, units readily available to build, is at a premium still. That's where this market is going to be very challenging, and where it leaves the economists trying to figure out what it means. Are you going to bid that up, or are you not going to? Are you going to go out and get new? And that's what we have to figure out. That's all in 2023, because we're trying to get ready for the end of 23. That's optimistic, but at least 2024.
Yeah, for sure. So let me ask you this then on another note, and then we're going to go to audience questions after this one, Dr. Dietz. What does the rise in cost in housing also mean for alternative building materials, hemp and others? Does this kind of condition in the market open the door for other innovation and other building product materials to make it to market?
Yeah, I think of the years 23 and 24 as years of innovation. I think that's why it's so important to go to events like the International Builder Show. I love the video at the start of this show where you'll see those new products. I mean, it even connects to issues like the labor shortage. I mean, the challenge with the labor shortage has two solutions. We can recruit, train, and retain individuals. That's part of the challenge. But it's also about increasing productivity. So whether that's new materials, materials that save on labor time, it means alternative construction materials in terms of thinking about pricing, evolving supply chains. For example, the building supply chain from China is going to be disrupted as an economic divorce occurs between the United States and China, or just simply building techniques, more off-site construction as a way of addressing the labor shortage. So, yeah, I think what we find is that in times of economic distress, particularly when it's preceded by a real run-up in building material costs, innovation tends to come about because of market forces. And that's a great opportunity for offsite construction providers, building materials supply chain. Talk to your builders, talk to your remodelers, get involved in the local association, because it's those conversations where we'll find new ways to build in communities. And of course, we know every community is unique, facing its own policy and supply chain issues.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I look forward to seeing it. I mean, I'm feeling it on my end. We get reached out for, by people pretty much every day now with a new concept, new product. They want to help us, help them push out there. So we're seeing that happening. And I mean, you got to think that the bigger players in the market know that that's going to start happening if they can't get these costs on, under control. It forces innovation. That's the American way.
That's right. Yeah. So the good thing that can come out of these challenges is innovation. It would certainly help to have the policy innovation as well. That's what NAHB tends to focus on from the advocacy side. So whether that's zoning reforms or a new softwood lumber agreement with Canada, or looking at labor issues and tax issues, finance issues, it'd be great to have a secondary market for builder loans that would help bring the cost of financing down. But yeah, market forces combined with policy advocacy, speaking as one voice, those are the factors that are going to help cause that rebound to go from maybe a more moderate rebound, as we discussed earlier, to a stronger rebound in 2024 and 25.
Yeah, for sure. Well, you know, I'm an offsite guy and I believe in it. I cut my teeth in it my entire career. What would you say to traditional builders, with this all coming up on us? How about them moving into offsite? Would you tell them to go for it if there was an opportunity for them to start looking at alternative ways of building?
It is absolutely worth having that conversation, because when you look at the factors that are driving builders into that space, and it's the labor shortage. As Greg mentioned, you've got 400,000 open jobs at any given moment in the labor industry. We don't think that's going to change over the next decade. We'll see some weakness in the residential construction labor market over the next 5 quarters due to cyclical forces, but it's the aging workforce that's really going to drive a lot of people there. And the thing that I would point out is, if we look at the census data right now, in terms of totally done off-site, modular and panelized construction is only about 2 to 3% of single-family home building. In the late 90s, it was 7 to 8%. So there's absolutely room for market expansion there. And again, anything that can increase the productivity of the industry and bend the cost curve in the right direction is going to help us serve those first-time home buyers. And I'll bet you money right now that home ownership and the home ownership rate is going to be a political issue in 2024, because of all the weakness that we talked about earlier is going to crowd out a lot of first-time buyers, and they're going to be very frustrated with both the housing market and policymakers.
Yeah, for sure. I'm doing my happy dance right now. You can't see it, but I love the offsite industry, and it really comes down to how are we all going to do less, do more with less people. Right. And it doesn't take away all the jobs. It just helps us be more efficient at it. Let's get to a couple comments and questions. We have about 5-10 minutes left here, and let's see who's out there today. All right, we got a LinkedIn user, Nicholas Ream with Montana Heritage Home Builders, watching from Montana. Hey, thank you for joining us today. Appreciate you joining us. Oh, this is no stranger to the NAHB. Eric Holt, University of Denver in the house. Eric, I'm going to be in Denver in 2 weeks. You're on my call list. I want to introduce you to some people out there for a big event we're doing. Good to see you. Andrew Seeley, howdy all, somewhere in Texas. Now, this is an interesting cat right here, because he has about several buildings on his property where he's doing research and innovation on better ways to build. All 7 of his houses out there are completely off grid, which is an interesting thing. So if you guys don't know Andrew, you should. He's an interesting character. All right, Tom Reddy out there. Hi, guys. Great information and approach to the codes. Love the balance and the best way to align ways to do it better to offset cost increases. Tom, good to see you. We got Wade Atterbury. Okay, here we go. Do you think the transition to offsite building will double within the next 3 to 5 years in this country? Well, there's a real case for that if we go by the numbers you just said, right?
That's right. I think within 5 years, if we're currently at around 3% of single-family home building, getting to 6% within 5 years is completely doable. The ceiling, and it could be 10, 15%, and we could get there over the next decade.
It is funny that you say that, right? Every time we have these recessions and we lose more skilled labor, it's making it harder and harder to keep doing things the traditional way. I think, and this is the same thing's going to happen over this next year. People have to eat. And if people are going to cut back on those big production builds and pretty much all the other builds, then, that's what we're looking at. Appreciate it, Wade. Thank you for that comment. Tom Reddy's back with a question. Is there anything we can be doing now to accelerate the housing affordability curve or prepare for the 2024 expected surge?
Yeah, I'm sure Greg can kick in on this as well, but I would say that the number one thing you can do is join your local home builders association and get involved with the local advocacy effort. Because if you think about the challenges that we face often with permit fees, zoning, delay factors, those are all ways you can bend the cost curve in the right direction. And it's really advocacy at that local association level that has the biggest bang for the buck.
It's interesting, Dave. So Nick Ream, the young man that you just announced, right?
Yeah.
So we have a program that we use at NAHB where we mentor some of our younger members. So he's my apprentice. So we were just together at Kansas City, right? And I didn't know. Good to see you, Nick. I didn't know he was going to hop on today, but that's what we're talking about, and just to follow up on what Rob just said, is it's absolutely imperative that we start circling the wagons even more so. 10 times what we're doing now as we head into this time period ahead. When you start looking at code implementation, when you start thinking about all the lots that we need to bring on with all the price increases, this is when we need to be able to unify our voice as well as bring in our customers. Our elected officials definitely listen to our customers. They, we can say what we need to, and we're definitely economic drivers and voters as well. But what they really want to know is people in their jurisdictions, in their areas, their constituents need to be able to live affordably in something that's attainable. And housing attainability is just off the charts now too.
Yeah.
And these are things that we have to look at, and legislators are going to be forced to hear us. And the more that we can work together, as Rob said, I mean, that's what we have to do. And we have to start, these elections, this cycle, you see that it's an issue that is starting to take place with increasing interest rates and so on. That's right. You wait, 24, it's going to be off the charts.
And the conversation has changed. I mean, this is where NAHB is engaged. And for example, we worked with Emily Badger in the New York Times. So she's probably politically not aligned with a lot of home builders, but wrote a great series of articles about the challenges of building entry-level construction.
Yeah.
So when you have sort of that kind of New York Times, NPR media focused on, what do builders need to get this done, and then giving that and amplifying that message to local policymakers, we just need to build on it. Because that's the way we're going to build that entry-level construction that we need in 24, 25, and 26.
Well, we should have them on the show and talk about it here as well, because, one of the things, Greg, I say this all the time, and Rob, is, we have a fragmented industry that's very siloed with a bunch of different organizations, and all the organizations do wonderful things. But you guys are the only organization that has the political power and the wherewithal in Capitol Hill to make big changes and have a voice. But to have a voice for offsite construction, modern methods construction, industrialized construction, we need to come together to have a big voice, and even with the NAHB, they're offsite's going to be part of the future, no matter what we say or do at this point. So how do we all come together so we can collectively bring one big voice so the NAHB can do their job? And I've been pushing for that for years now. And I'm happy to kind of see it that conversation starting to happen. So awesome. All right. Another question here. Joe Butler, oil is net up 50% from pre-COVID times, but off materially from the highs, $60 to $115 to $90. So the billion dollar question is, how many barrels of oil are there in a finished home?
That is a number I do not have memorized. I have a lot of numbers memorized, but you'd be surprised. There is a significant percentage of indirect costs that go into every kind of building material, so that when you see changes
Right.
in oil prices, it does affect home building costs. I think it's like 3 to 4% on
Yeah.
net. But the bigger effect is when you see that kind of variability in oil prices, it tends to have a big local market effect. So whether it's Oklahoma or Texas or Louisiana, so we
Yeah.
watch oil prices closely as both a recession indicator, but also as a local regional health indicator for housing markets.
Yeah, appreciate that, Joe. You had a follow up here. Let me go to that real quick. We need to think outside the box of material costs. I think costs associated with energy are what we need to focus on. How do we hedge against this risk?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Good
so
question,
it's
Joe.
finding the sweet spot between mandates and incentives. And so we know there is, for example,
Right.
market demand for more energy efficient housing. Certainly new housing has a huge advantage over the existing stock. So we found that from a policy perspective, the best tools are things like the federal energy credits, whether it's an incentive for building a new energy efficient home, the Section 45L tax credit, or things like the Section 25C existing home credit to allow the remodeling industry to really fix the low hanging fruit when we talk about residential energy use, which is the aging existing stock. So providing those carrots to allow market forces to come in and reinvest in housing is a way to essentially tap into the forces of innovation and improve the housing stock in the United States.
I love it. I love it. One last comment here. Dave, this is one of the best shows you have put on. Great job, guys. I love it. I think this is amazing. I know we're out of time today. Rob, I'm going to call you Dr. Deach. You deserve that, at least in my opinion, Doctor. And Greg Ugaldi, I really appreciate both of you taking time out of your busy schedule to update, what we have going on in this industry. I look forward to bringing the offsite construction industry together with the NAHB. I'm going to keep pushing and working on it from my end for sure, because I think once we have that bigger voice, not only does it give us a voice on Capitol Hill and codes, but you know what? It also helps everybody start to collaborate and talk about better ways to build. It's not about one dominating another. We're never doing away with site building, and offsite's never going to be the way of the future 100% either. So, but we need to learn to live together, work together, and build together. And I think it could be very successful for all of us.
Sounds great.
Yeah, perfect.
Good.
I'm going to put one more comment up there because, Greg, we can't do without Henry Mickelberg.
That's right.
If there's a
Good to hear
cultural
from
change
Henry.
to renting from home ownership, will this present any new financial crash risks? That's a great question.
The challenge, this goes back to my grad school research. I've been studying the impacts of home ownership since the late 90s. Home ownership is the primary ways that the typical American family accumulates wealth. So, we are expecting a decline in home ownership in 2023. And if that occurs, we've got to find new ways to provide ways for those first-time and first-generation buyers to get back on the ladder of housing.
That's right.
Attain home ownership. And that's going to have to be a policy conversation in 2023. So the risk there is the long-term one of missing out on that source of wealth accumulation. And then, quite frankly, homeownership does have nice positive impacts in terms of making people stakeholders in their community. There's a time to own. There's a time to rent. Right. There's a time to live in single family, time to live in multifamily. But ultimately, about 90% of American households are homeowners for at least some part of their lives. And we need to make sure that those opportunities are available for younger households as well.
Awesome.
Right.
Love it. Love it. Greg, did I miss anything? Is there anything you want to put out there before we close out?
Just real quick. So on Rob's point too, you have to understand where he's coming from. So it's not only a community builder, it's people's personal wealth. You heard him say that a couple times. But you have to understand, well, when Rob did his research on this, he was able to go to every one of the schools at the Ohio State University, but seriously, sociology to psychology, into the business area and really find out what everybody was focused on when it came to home ownership. And the one thing that you learn very quickly is exactly to Henry's point is that, yes, that does open up a whole new list of concerns if we start varying too far from our model to go after as much home ownership and target that as much as we can. So that's the balance We need to do what's right. As Rob said, we need to get through all of these things. But at the end, you have to balance and keep a very close look on home ownership and what that means to our country.
It is the American dream.
It is. It is. And the American dream is not dead. In fact, you gave me a lot of optimism, a lot of optimism here and hope for the future. So that was we had the trick, and then you left us with some treats. Dr. Dietz, I hope you and your family have a wonderful, wonderful Thanksgiving. And Greg, you and yours as well. I don't know if everybody knows it, but, we all have twins on this show. It's kind of a weird thing. Look at that. I guess, great things happen in groups. Who knows? Otherwise, we are heading to San Francisco tomorrow at 7 a.m. So if you're going to be at the Pittsburgh International Airport, I might just be there. Look for us. We're going to the Industrialized Wood-Based Construction Conference. So if you want to go, be sure to join us there. I'm going to flash this up real quick so everybody can see. And only right here on Dave Cooper Live can you get $100 off admission right before a show starts. So if you want to come, you best use the code that's on there, IWBCCR, so you guys can show up so we can talk about changing the world out there as well. All right, gentlemen, thank you so much. That is a wrap for today.
Thank you, Dave.
All right, don't go anywhere. I'll come back to you both after the outro. The rest of you have a wonderful Monday. And don't worry that it's Monday, because Monday's the greatest day of the week, because it allows us all to keep moving the ball forward and changing how we build so we can build it better. I'm Dave Cooper, Greg Ugaldi, Dr. Dietz. If you're not following, you're wrong. Go and follow him right now. Bye now.
Bye now.